Hello, my name is Diana Bersunza Ruelas, and I'm holding a master's degree in English language teaching from Universidad da Vinci. My action research project is titled Enhancing the ESL Placement Process in the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program, an action research study on phonetic spelling, decoding skills, and reading comprehension in middle school students. Why was this issue important and how did it arise? Existing ESL placement relied mainly on oral fluency. Children were interviewed by teachers and completely overlooked the reading and writing skills. We needed to give results really fast, so we came to the conclusion that we are living the side effects of the pandemic lockdown from COVID-19, which left many students, neurotypical and neurodiverse, with very important gaps in their literacy foundations, giving now very serious problems to decode, phonological awareness, fluency, and of course, limiting their reading comprehension. This misplacement in the language B didn't help. It led to the underperformance of all our students that were not taking English as a second language who really needed, into a very low performance in content-based mainstream classes. All the classes were affected because they couldn't read and understand. They were only struggling to decode. They decoded wrongly. This issue was very important because I work with neurodiverse and neurotypical students. My school is inclusive. I work for an American school with an international baccalaureate curriculum, and we receive people from all over the world. So we started having these observations, and we figured out that oral proficiency didn't reliably indicate reading readiness. So, before this need, we identified for inclusive evidence-based placement using tools like RAS+, that was going to help us diagnosing the phonemic awareness gaps. Nobody had used this tool before. Not in my school. We were overlooking something extremely important. We were asking why our students were not understanding what they read. So, of course, we discovered that by the evident post-pandemic literacy gaps, because their literacy foundation process was disrupted, we had the phonemic awareness, the decoding, the fluency, and the comprehension totally limited. And I can say that it is a reality nowadays that in every classroom we have neurodiverse students without a tailored diagnostic. One of my most important foundations for my theory supporting this need of changing the complete placement process in the English as a second language subject was Stanovich, who asserted the Matthew effect. It says that the rich get richer and the poor gets poorer. It means that strong readers continue excel and improve, while struggling readers compound. So this was my first piece of evidence to support my change in the placement test. On a second hand, I can say that Grave was also a foundational author in my research because he highlighted the necessity of automatic decoding and fluency for reading comprehension. A student that cannot identify a complete word in a text, that the number of words identified is the fluency they get. Without it, it's impossible to have reading comprehension. On the other hand, we had Omrod and Jones, and they emphasized that teaching decoding, explicitly decoding, supports comprehension in inclusive ESL settings. That's what I needed because I have neurodiverse and neurotypical students. Huffman and Secord identified the pandemic-related learning losses that affected completely the literacy foundations process, because these kids that right now are in 6th grade during the pandemic were starting their literacy foundations. Now, I didn't know how to assemble or what to justify my change in the placement process, so I found Phonetic. This Arabian teacher defined an assessment tool to diagnose strengths and weaknesses for individualized instruction. Okay? So he justifies the inclusion of phonemic and decoding diagnostics in a placement test. So this will ensure validity in multilingual contexts, just as mine in my international community. I was gathering data through a mixed method design. I investigated the effectiveness of integrating phonemic diagnostics into the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program ESL placement process. I used a mixed methods design. I investigated the effectiveness of integrating phonemic diagnostics into the International Baccalaureate Middle Years Program ESL placement process. I gathered 10 ESL students from 6th to 9th grades. I included both neurotypical and neurodiverse. I selected them and they were extremely relevant to figure out the problem, and they were under-addressed in their reading foundation skills. The cycle I used in my research was to identify the problem, then to collect the data, analyze it, and finally intervene with recommendations. My 10 students went through external standardized placement tests, and they were from the Common European Framework, ensuring validity and fairness, giving the result of A1 and A2 levels in reading. Then I used the RAS Plus phonological awareness assessments, which gave me 17 phonological and phonemic subskills critical for decoding and reading fluency. And you cannot imagine what I found. The teacher survey, I asked my colleagues in order to gather insights on how to cope the struggling readers. And finally, I asked my students how they were motivating themselves when reading. I was asking them questions about attitudes to reading and preferred reading materials. The analysis was a triangulation of teacher and student and diagnostic assessment data that clearly identified decoding, fluency, and comprehension gaps in Spanish and in English, both. My intervention recommendations were very easy. We had to integrate phonemic awareness diagnostics into the placement of ESL. My project gave my neurotypical and neurodiverse students a light at the end, because of course with this I'm going to help also my neurodiverse students, which are part of the autistic spectrum, ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, and dyslexia, among some others. Okay, so this study is important because it triangulated several very important tools. Despite my pandemic-related disruptions found from my students now in 6th through 9 grades, together with the service from my colleagues, the RAS Plus platform that helped me having all these instruments ready to use, and they helped me embedding phonological awareness and decoding diagnostics into placement testing, supporting early intervention, equitable support, and improved reading readiness in inclusive ESL classrooms, helping to break the Matthew effect by Stanovich. This cycle, where the good readers excel and the poor readers compound, is broken with this. Thank you very much.